I think it's disingenuous. I think it is misrepresentative. I think, as I said to you earlier on, you're trying to shift this onto the boxing board of control. You're trying to shift this onto the fighters. You're trying to suggest that the fighters can actually determine which banned substance they will allow another fighter to take, and they'll still make the fight. If this was a £100,000 fight, it would have been stopped. Because it was an £8 million fight, it was not. And we can talk about the legalese. We've done all this earlier on in the show, and Spencer will have a view on it as well. But Eddie's not being pushed on his role in this. He's shifting the blame onto other people. There was a moral responsibility on one of the leading lights in world boxing to have seen a failed drugs test and go, this is a fight with huge jeopardy on it. It's a catch-weight fight that's got controversy around the weight that certain fighters are having to get to. I think it's in the best interest of sport, this sport, the sport I love and represent in the very highest way, to put a stop to this. And that's not what happened. And you can dress it up and say that people, the British Boxing Board of Control, leaked a result. This person doesn't question you the way you want to be questioned. This is that. That's the other. The fighters can make their own decisions. When you get down to the nub of it, it is not right.
Do you agree with Simon that Hearn is shifting blame?
Absolutely. I think that we've heard that in recent interviews. The interviews that we've heard, we've not really been getting the answers that we've wanted, that we need, to sort of clear all this up. And now, obviously, with Conor, just relinquishing his title so that he can't be banned for anything. That allows him to be able to box anywhere else in the world. His license. His license. It allows him to box anywhere else in the world, and he takes it to court, and it goes to the courts, and then he's got a defence where they have to prove he's guilty as opposed to him proving he's innocent. So, I understand it all.
My understanding of it is he will relinquish his licence, but they may well suspend his licence in absentee, which means it makes it very difficult for him to go and get a licence somewhere else in the fact that his licence in this country. Yeah. Now, I think what they're trying to do is they're scrabbling and they're trying to regroup. Because as much as I re-emphasise this point, and I'm sure Spencer will come in right behind me, I really would love an answer that exonerated Conor Benn. I would really love that answer. I'd really like us all to be able to say there, thank God for that. Let's let this boy go on.
Absolutely.
And it starts with, let's have your B samples. It starts with, let's have the reasons why this stuff is in your system. Let's have the answers. Who helped you with this? If the stuff's in your system, how has it got there? Let's start with some truth. Yeah. Let's not start with VADA testing is different, because VADA testing is the gold standard according to Eddie Hearn in previous discussions. VADA wasn't something that was voluntarily signed up by Conor Benn. Yeah. It's something that he had to sign up to if he wanted to be in the top 15 of the WBC, which he did.
Yeah.
Right. So these are all half-truths and deflections away from the reality, which is there is a failed drugs test, and those that knew didn't want to do anything about it.
Exactly. That's the key point, Simon.
I think that if he had a ban by the British Boxing Board of Control, he'd find it very, very difficult to get a licence elsewhere under the circumstances. Yeah. And I think that now that he's voluntarily give his licence up, that does open up various other doors.
I also think that there's a case to be answered for the British Boxing Board of Control, which is, excuse me, you were calling who unfair and biased? Let's have you can have one from us then. You can have a rip from our lawyers about the nature of your allegations, because it seems to me that people are running around hiding behind lawyers. If I'm the British Boxing Board of Control, I would be sitting there going, on which point are we unfair and biased? Because that's quite a significant allegation for them to be making.
That's a good point. It's our job, Simon, as you know, to get in front of the principal characters in something like this.
Except when they're hiding.
Eddie Hearn has also claimed it was wrong for the media and media outlets such as us to interview Chris Eubank Sr. in recent weeks. Let's hear first from Hearn on that, and then you'll hear from Chris Eubank Sr. speaking to Spencer on his own state of mind.
Well, what he's referring to, by the way, is the deal of the weight. That's what he's referring to. Listen, he's had a very difficult time lately, and I think some people in the media, quite frankly, are taking liberties in trying to, use him for these interviews and stuff like that. But that's another story.
Anyone who puts it out there that possibly my state of thinking
and
may be
your
compromised.
mental health.
If anyone who's putting that out there, what they're trying to do is actually pull the wool over your eyes so you don't listen to the common sense of what you're hearing. They're trying to mask it. Yeah. But you can now tell them, no, I've looked him in the eye.
Absolutely.
He's the same man I interviewed 3 years ago.
So it begs the question, Spencer, how was Chris Eubank Sr. when you met him?
Look, so I went up there. I spent a lot of time with Chris before we'd done the interview and after. And He's fine. Mentally, he's in a great state of mind. The big problem he had...
He was doing a future show, right?
he was doing a show with Nigel Benn, actually. And the big problem he had, he said, and where people were worrying about me and my state of mind and my mental health, etc., was because of the position his son was being put in, and 157, and then obviously what's come to light. This is where the concern was. He said, I was worried for my son's life, as you can imagine, but everyone flipped that and said, oh, he's mentally not right at the moment. He said, but now as we're speaking and this fight has been called off, what do you think of me? How do you think I look? And I said, well, I think you look great. He said, well, I'm in a fantastic place because I've had the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders, and I know my son is now safe. And that's where he was at. So the big problem was, and he was saying, I think people are masking stuff over and, trying to say, have a look at the scene here and, he's not well, don't interview him. He said he wanted to get interviewed. He was pleased that we travelled to Coventry to interview him because he wanted the public to hear his side of things.
I mean, to be honest, Simon, there's going to come a time, right, who's prepared to stand up and tell it as it is? Because that's where we're at. I think
anybody, whether it's Eddie Hearn or whether it's Frank Warren or whether it's Ben Shalom or whether it's Callie Sowland or whether it's Bob Arum, anybody that's in the eye of this storm would suffer the same pushback from people. So people that suggest that somehow you or I, specifically me, have some agenda against Eddie Hearn and want to put Eddie through the mixer and not put Frank through the mixer when Tyson Fury failed drug tests. That's not true, because I've had those conversations on air and in person. It's not true when we don't push back against other fighters. But this one is more compelling because this is a really challenging set of circumstances. And what Eddie is seeking to do is don't look over here, look over there. Don't look over there, look over here, right? And that's not how it works. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to bully your way through, bluster, BS people through because you think people are either working with you, frightened of you, or working for you. And in this context, it's not good enough. And if you are a blue chip promoter, which I personally believe that he is, this is not right. This is not in keeping with what this sport needs to have. And the more this sport gets adverse publicity and negative reactions, the more the sport itself is going to come under pressure. And unfortunately, the thing I worry about is that there is clearly something amiss here. And I wonder if Spencer will comment on this, about the nature of how a fighter can have things in his system without anybody else being aware of it. Mm-hmm. Is it likely, and I'm not suggesting you point your finger at anybody, but is it likely that a fighter could be involved in anything that resembles drug cheating and the benefits as a result of it, and those around him in his immediate periphery, all the way up from those that work with him on a daily basis to those that potentially endorse and put him out in the world? Yeah. Are they not likely to be involved in what he does and doesn't do?
Absolutely. Listen, I think that there's some well-known names, some huge superstars of the sport that have failed tests or whatever and have put it down to contaminated meat that have come off farms, or contaminated meat, because the country, their meat is always contaminated, etc. And so there's, they've got an argument. You can understand that they've got some form of argument. In this instance, right, and we know what it is, this fertility drug, I'm struggling. And I don't know about you, Simon, or you, Jim, but I'm struggling to know how you could get that into your system without knowingly taking it. That's where I'm struggling.
But what about the bigger question I just asked? There might not be something you want to answer about the reality of those that orbit him, those that are in his space and in his face every day of the week that work with him. Is it likely that if someone... And we are jumping to the conclusion because we're not being able to push back on it because they won't give B samples, they won't sit in front of tribunals and clear their names. Is it likely that most likely that other people would have known about this?
It's a great question. And I think that...
the answer is yes, isn't it?
Listen, I don't think it takes a lot of working out. Let me just say that. I really don't think...
So it brings a house of cards down a lot of people's heads, doesn't it?
Okay. Guys, at the appropriate time, Conor Benn will speak out on this and on the doping allegation.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.